Hello, Mr. Beckman here. I'm just wanted to put together a video here. The purpose of the video today is to give you an overview of the Poetry Out Loud program. And this year, it's just an opportunity to do this for extra credit if you'd like to. I do have an assignment that I want you to do today that is required, but as far as being a part of the program, that's going to be optional this year because it's going to be a virtual program. In the past, I've had all my students do this in class, but because of the situation this year, it's going to be optional. But I will explain it here so that way you can make a decision on whether you want to do it or not. So first of all, Poetry Out Loud is a national program, and we've had a lot of success here at Anacortes High School. We've had a state champ in 2015, Alex Hainsworth. And when I say state champ, that means she went on to Washington, D.C. to compete. So this is kind of like the spelling bee, where you start in the classroom, you go to a regional competition, state competition, and then all the way to a national competition. We also had Addie Gardner. I think she was state champ twice. She went in 2017 to Washington, D.C. Senior from last year, Grace Hill. You probably know Grace. She was our regional champ the last 2 years. She, I believe, should have made it to the state program, should have been state champion, but there's a lot of competition at the state level. And so she just came up short. So obviously we're looking for people who want to do this. And basically it's a program where you select a poem from the Poetry Out Loud website, memorize it, present that poem, and compete against other people presenting those poems. So here's the way it's outlined. We start with a classroom competition. And again, this year it's going to be all via Zoom, virtual. So your first mission is to pick a poem from the Poetry Out Loud website. It must be a poem from that website. And you memorize that poem. And if you want to, you don't have to do this, but if you want to memorize it and present it, we're going to be doing that in our classroom competition on Wednesday, December 16th at 10 a.m. That'll be right after advisory on December 16th. I think that's probably the last Wednesday before winter break. And then assuming that you get selected to go to the next level, the regional competition is going to be in Burlington I think it's at the Burlington Public Library in February. And at that one, you recite 2 poems from the website. So obviously you have 1 poem that you recite for us in the class, and then you want to have another one ready to go by February. The state competition in March is in Tacoma. So if you win the regional competition, like we've had students do in the past, you would go to Tacoma. Very nice competition there at the state. And then, of course, in April, they will have the national competition. So how does this work? First off, I'd like everybody to go to the Poetry Out Loud website so that you can take a look at the poems that are there. There's all kinds of great poems there. And the idea is you can pick any poem you want from that website, except there are 3 that I want you to stay away from just because I'm very tired of these poems and I don't think they're very good or worth your time. One is called The Star. One is called Fire and Ice. It's a Robert Frost poem. And then Catch a Little Rhyme. Don't do those poems, please. So let's go to the website here, Poetry Out Loud. And you see how it'll give you some information on the Poetry Out Loud program. It'll give you poets and poems. Again, there's a nice variety of poems at this website, both from contemporary poets and poets who have been long dead, Shakespeare, for example. And the way to go about this is just to start browsing. Browse poems, goes by poets. If you have a poet you like, maybe the poet has a poem there here. You can look at collections. You can look at different forms of poems. You can do a random poem. Obviously, let's just do a random poem here, and it'll take me to At Last the New Arriving. So read that poem. If you like it, great. If you don't, look for another one. The other tab here you might want to look at is just, okay, it's a part of the competition. They have examples here of videos that you can watch of people from the past. And this is good to do because it gives you an idea of, it's a little bit theatric in the sense you're trying to bring that poem to life. You're trying to interpret that poem and bring it to life through your voice. You definitely want to look at this link called Tips on Reciting, because that gives you an overview on how these recitations are judged. So you obviously memorize the poem, And then you present the poem to the judges. And the criteria are here: physical presence, voice and articulation, dramatic appropriateness, evidence of understanding, overall performance, accuracy. So physical presence, you'll be presenting via Zoom. They'll probably have you stand up and before your camera. And the idea is just to be as poised as possible. Voice and articulation, obviously we're hearing this poem, and the idea is to try to bring that poem to life. So think about the tone of that poem and try to have an appropriate tone. Dramatic appropriateness is just the idea of, okay, you capture the tone of the poem, the meaning of the poem as you're reciting it. You're not just reciting it, deadpan. If I were reciting Robert Frost stopping by woods on a snowy evening, I probably wouldn't want to say, "Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow." It's not a very dramatically appropriate. The idea is to think about the tone. "Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow." And evidence of understanding is that idea of, are you just mouthing the words, or does it seem like you really understand the meaning of the poem? And then overall performance. So, and then of course, accuracy is just, is it memorized? Did you include all the words? So for example, the judges will be able to go to this website and see the poem that you're reciting and making sure that you obviously have done everything. Now you can look through this and you can see tips on those specific criteria, and you can also watch videos of people. So when they say voice and articulation, if you're not sure exactly what they mean, you can look at some examples of students like you, high school students, who have recited these poems in the past. And that might also be a good way of finding a poem you might like. So the website, again, is very helpful. Lots of great poems at this website. So take some time, and what I want you to do is find at least one poem that you like and try to think about why you like that poem, and try to think, if you were going to bring that poem to life, what would be the tone? What would be a major tone in that poem? Try to come up with an adjective that would describe the tone. Okay, so once you found a poem, obviously you want to start thinking about memorizing it. Again, we have time on our side right now before December 16th if you want to participate. The idea is to read the poem every day. Think about the poem. Think about the speaker of the poem. Every poem has a persona. It may be the poet, it may not be the poet, but try to capture who is the speaker, what's going on in that poem, what's the subject, what's the major theme, and then also what is the attitude that the speaker has towards that subject. That might change throughout the poem, but the idea is to think about that relationship between the speaker, the theme, and the actual tone of the poem. That's going to help you bring it to life for the audience. You might also want to pick another poem down the road, because if you make it to the regional competition, you'll be doing 2 poems. So it might be a good idea to pick a couple so that you have one in your back pocket that you can be thinking about. Again, we talked about the judging criteria. That's also something you want to become aware of, especially if you're going to compete in the competition. And then, of course, be prepared. We'll talk about this in class, and I will, if you want to participate, I will send you, or you'll have my Zoom contact. We'll be doing this at 10 o'clock on December 13th. That'll be our classroom competition. So that's an overview of the process. Now, what I want you to do for this assignment, this part I want everybody to do, just because I want you to take a look at the website. So go to this Poetry Out Loud assignment, and I will have a link to this video, obviously, and I also have a link to the Poetry Out Loud website. And what I want you to do is, just in this comment section, is write down the title of the poem that you found, whether or not you're going to compete in the competition. Just try to have one poem, and then think about a tone that would go with that poem. Again, the idea is, what is the writer's attitude towards his or her subject, or the theme, the major idea in the poem. And then if you have other questions, we can talk about that in class. But that's Poetry Out Loud for this year. Again, let me know if you have other questions on that.